for joining me on the news. Here are stories making the rounds at this hour. Amidst political uncertainty, Nepal members of parliament vote for new president. Moscow launches barrage of missiles on Ukrainian cities. After days of protests, Georgia withdraws foreign agents bill. Australia to purchase up to 5 nuclear subs from the US, and 103 miners found in abandoned truck trailer returned to Guatemala. On elections, Nepal's parliament members have queued to vote a new president, the third since the Himalayan nation abolished a centuries-old monarchy and became a republic. The presidential poll has stoked feuds among the major political parties and fueling political uncertainty. On Thursday, a total of 884 members of the federal parliament and provincial assemblies assembled in the capital, Kathmandu, to vote for the new president. The final results are anticipated by Thursday night. Both candidates in the presidential race are eminent career politicians. Ramchandra Pudel is a senior leader of the Napoli Congress Party and formerly served as the Speaker of the House of Representatives. His opponent, Subhash Chandra Nembang of the Communist Party of Nepal, Unified Marxist-Leninist, has also earlier served as the Speaker. The national election in November last year left a drooped parliament, leading to a delicate coalition government taking over. Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal's choice to back a candidate outside the coalition partners led to the alliance's main party pulling its support. As a result, Dahal was forced to seek confidence votes in parliament later this month. Experts say the presidential poll and confidence vote could lead to further instability. The face of political instability in Nepal has not ended despite the fact that we had a successful national election and a new coalition government in place, said Durba Adhikara, an independent analyst in Kathmandu. Dahal has also lost the support of 3 major political parties that were part of the early coalition government. Besides facing the vote of confidence, his regime has had a rocky beginning even before he could address crucial issues facing the country of 30 million. Nepal is still battling to recover from the economic plight brought by COVID-19, which led to a decrease in the number of foreign tourists coming to climb the country's mountain peaks and hike its trails. Reviving tourism is essential to bolster Nepal's economy. Dahal has also must balance relations between Nepal's 2 giant neighbors, India and China. Both New Delhi and Beijing compete in the Himalayan nation. On the Russia-Ukraine war, Russia has released a barrage of missiles on cities across Ukraine, including the capital, Kyiv, the Black Sea port of Odessa, and the northeastern city of Kharkiv, according to Ukrainian officials and reports. Early on Thursday, the missile raid set off air attack sirens all across Ukraine. Mayor Vitaly Klitschko in Kyiv said 2 people were injured following blasts in the city's Sivtonashki and Holosivsky districts. Power supply has been cut preemptively to about 15% of Kyiv residents, he added. In eastern Ukraine, 15 missiles hit the city of Kharkiv and the outlying area, striking residential buildings, according to Governor Ole Sinahubov. He swore to give more details about the scale of the destruction or any casualties in Ukraine's second largest city. Kharkiv Mayor Ihor Terekov reported on Telegram that there were problems with electricity in some parts of the city. Governor Maksim Marchenko in the Odessa region said on Telegram that a mass missile attack had hit an energy facility in the port city, cutting off power. Anti-aircraft units had downed some missiles and fresh attacks could follow, he said, urging residents to stay in shelters. More explosions were reported in the northern city of Chernihiv and the western Lviv region, as well as in the cities of Dnipro, Luhansk, and Rivne. Ukrainian media also reported explosions in the western regions of Ivano-Frankivsky and Ternopil. Meanwhile, Ukraine's Energoatom state company said the missile raids caused the Zaporizhia nuclear plant, which is under Russian control, to lose electric power supply. Energoatom said the 5th and 6th reactor have been cut down and electric power required for the plant's functioning is supplied by 18 diesel generators which have sufficient fuel for 10 days. Preventive emergency power cuts were applied in Kyiv, Dnipropetrovsk, Donetsk and Odessa regions, supplier DTEK said. Ukrainian railways also reported power outages in certain areas. Georgia's governing party announced it is withdrawing a draft law from parliament criticized as possibly stifling media freedom and civil society after days of protests against it in the capital, Tbilisi. In a statement on Thursday, the Georgian Dream Party said it would unconditionally withdraw the bill, we supported without any reservations. It cited the need to reduce confrontation in society. The bill will have needed Georgian organizations receive over 20% of their funding from abroad to register as foreign agents or face fines. Georgian Dream earlier said the law was needed to unmask critics of the Georgian Orthodox Church, one of the country's most powerful institutions. Opponents of the bill, including Georgian President Salome Zurabichvili, who said she would veto it if it crossed her desk, have compared it with a 2012 Russian law which has been used to clamp down on dissent. The Georgian government says the legislation is modeled on U.S. foreign agent laws in place since the 1930s. The bill has exasperated supporters of Georgian membership in the European Union after EU officials condemned the draft law and said it will complicate Georgia's path to joining the bloc. Last year, the EU refused to grant Georgia candidate status alongside Moldova and Ukraine, citing delayed policy for the Georgian people. An EU delegation in Georgia said on Thursday it welcomed a decision taken by the governing party to withdraw controversial legislation. We welcome the announcement by the ruling party to withdraw draft legislation on foreign influence. We encourage all political parties in Georgia to resume pro-EU reforms for Georgia to achieve candidate status, it said in a statement. Now, according to 4 U.S. officials, Australia is likely to announce it will buy as many as 5 U.S. Virginia-class nuclear-powered submarines in the 2030s as part of a landmark Pacific security deal with the United States and the United Kingdom. Under the so-called AUKUS agreement, at least 1 U.S. submarine will visit Australian ports in the coming years, and by the late 2030s, a fresh class of submarines will be built with UK designs and US technology, one of the officials said, according to reports. Anthony Albanese, Australian Prime Minister, is due to meet US President Joe Biden and UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak in San Diego on Monday to reveal AUKUS' next steps. The Pacific Security Pact, first announced in September 2021, and which is also expected to include collaboration on hypersonic missiles, artificial intelligence, and cyber warfare, is seen as an effort to encounter China's rising might and assertive positioning in the region and has drawn condemnation from Beijing. 2 of the officials, speaking on the condition of anonymity, said after the annual port visit, the U.S. will deploy some submarines in Western Australia by about 2027. In the early 2030s, Australia will buy 3 Virginia-class submarines and have the option to buy 2 more. Nuclear submarines can stay underwater for longer than conventional ones and are harder to detect. Still ahead, over 100 children and teens from Guatemala have been flown home after they were found in a truck trailer in Mexico, one of the largest recent returns of unaccompanied minors back to the Central American country. On Wednesday, the flight to Guatemala City carried 106 youth ages 12 to 17 who had been traveling without family to the United States, Guatemala's Migration Institute said this week. We are very concerned because we are seeing returns of children and teenagers increasing, said Wanda Alpast, an official at Guatemala's Migration Institute, who noted that many were teenage boys with only primary school education. Between January and March, Guatemala had already received 430 unaccompanied minors from Mexico and the U.S. before the newest group was discovered by Mexican authorities in a trailer in the eastern state of Veracruz. According to U.S. data about unsanctioned crossings at the country's southern border, most unaccompanied minors who reach the U.S. from the Central America come from Guatemala. Many are often fleeing deep poverty. And there are more stories. Russia-Ukraine war, U.S. to seize airplane worth over $25 million owned by Russian oil giant. According to a statement released on Wednesday, the United States government has demanded and obtained a warrant to seize a Russian aircraft valued at $25 million. The U.S.-made plane, a Boeing 737-7JU, is accused of traveling from a foreign country to Russia in violation of U.S. law and sanctions enforced after Moscow's 2022 invasion of Ukraine. The plane was last in the U.S. in 2014, according to the statement from the U.S. Attorney's Office for New York's Eastern District. But the U.S. alleges the plane has flown in and out of Russia at least 7 times in violation of federal law. The Boeing is said to be owned by the PJSC Rosneft oil company, whose headquarters in Moscow. It is one of the world's largest publicly traded oil companies. U.S. Attorney Brian Pease said, according to the report, today's enforcement action demonstrates there is a price to pay for Russian companies and oligarchs that flagrantly evade sanctions that the United States has imposed in response to the unjustified war against the people of Ukraine. Rosneft's chief executive officer, Igor Ivanovich Sechin, was earlier sanctioned by the U.S. in 2014 for his ties to the Russian government. At the time, the then U.S. President Barack Obama issued an executive order targeted at individuals believed to be responsible for or complicit in attempts to undermine Ukraine's sovereignty and democracy. That year, Russia annexed the peninsula of Crimea and tried to seize territory in Ukraine's eastern provinces. The sanctions froze Sechin's assets in the U.S. and barred anyone in the country from conducting business with him. Not only did the transfer of a U.S.-made plane to Russia violate those sanctions, but it also ran afoul of the Export Control Reform Act, U.S. officials said on Wednesday. The law, enacted in 2018, grants the U.S. president control over the export and transfer of items to protect national security. United Nations condemned aimless arrest of Iranian refugee in Australia. The United Nations has condemned Australia extended immigration detention of Howard's Iranian asylum seeker. The United Nations Human Rights Council's UNHCRC Working Group on Arbitrary Detention declared the man's imprisonment to be de facto indefinite and in breach of international law. The refugee, who prefers to be known as Mr. A for his family's safety, fled Iran in 2010 via Indonesia, arriving in Australia later that year by boat. He was held in immigration detention for the next 18 months while his case was assessed before being given a bridging visa. He spent the following 6 years living as an asylum seeker in the Australian community, but in 2017 he was detained again and his bridging visa had expired. Mr. A was charged with 4 offenses and as a foreigner without a visa put in compulsory detention. He was later found not guilty of 3 of the charges, while the 4th never proceeded to a conviction, and he has no criminal record. Desperate for a release after closely 6 years of failed applications for freedom, he brought his case before the UNHCRC Working Group on Arbitrary Detention 2 years ago. The group's findings, handed down last month, clearly condemned Mr. A's detention. They reported that the Australian government had not presented any particular reason for the detention, such as an individualized likelihood of absconding, a danger of crimes against others, or a risk of acts against national security. The group found Mr. A's deprivation of liberty to be in contravention of several legal instruments. Mr. A suffers from depression, which has been causally related to his detention, and is unable to receive effective treatment. The UNHCRC group has called for Mr. A's instant release and to grant him compensations and reparations in accordance with international law. It has also urged the Australian government to investigate the circumstances surrounding his arbitrary detention and to take appropriate measures against those responsible for the violation of his human rights. In Africa, I am a proud African, says Tunisian leader to ECOWAS chairman. On Wednesday, Tunisia's president hosted his counterpart from Guinea-Bissau. The visit to Tunis of the ECOWAS chairman came amidst racist attacks aiming sub-Saharan migrants in the North African nation. President Kais Saied, during a National Security Council last month, connected undocumented immigrants to violence and crimes. From the Carthage Palace, he denied racism, insisting on his will to uphold the law. There is the Tunisian state, the sovereign Tunisian legality concerning the status of foreigners. Even though they are our brothers, they may not have Tunisian nationality. I believe that any country wouldn't accept parallel jurisdiction to the state's jurisdictions. Rights groups have reported a hike in vigilante violence, including stabbings of Black Africans, since the president's initial comments, while migrants say they have been thrown out of their dwellings in mass and handed over to mob justice. Students and economic migrants from countries such as Guinea, Mali, and Ivory Coast fleeing Tunisia were repatriated in recent days. Earlier this week, Tunisian authorities announced measures to, in quotes, improve conditions of foreigners in Tunisia and ease procedures for those seeking to put things right. President Sissoko Embalo gave credibility to the thesis of a misinterpretation of Said's speech. The African Union issued on February 25th a statement urging all member states to treat all migrants with dignity wherever they come from and refrain from racialized hate speech that could bring people to harm. Tunisia's foreign ministry rejected the statement, saying it contains baseless terms and accusations and was built on a misunderstanding of positions of Tunisian authorities. I'll be back with news on Nigeria. Stay with me. Welcome back to Zoom on Nigeria. INEC postpones Guba Assembly polls to March 18th. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has shifted the governorship and state assemblies elections earlier planned for Saturday, March 11th. The commission took the decision at its management meeting in Abuja, which was convened on Wednesday after the Court of Appeal gave it the go-ahead to reconfigure bimodal voter accreditation machines, BVAS. The meeting, which began at 7 p.m. and ended at 10 p.m., was presided over by its national chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu. In a statement by its National Commissioner and Chairman Information and Voter Education Committee, Festus Okoye, on Wednesday night, INEC said it could not go ahead with the governorship election as earlier scheduled because it required time to reconfigure BVAS machines, which were used for the presidential election on February 25th. Earlier on Wednesday, the Court of Appeal had granted permission to INEC to reconfigure BVAS used for the presidential election. The appellate court panel held that permitting the objections of the Labour Party and its presidential candidate Peter Obi will amount to tying the hands of the respondent INEC. In the wake of the declaration of the All Progressives Congress candidate Bola Tinubu as the president-elect, Obi had approached the appellate court where he secured an order restraining the commission from reconfiguring the BVAS used for the election. The court handed down the order in the ruling it gave on Friday, granting permission to Obi and his People's Democratic Party counterpart, Atiku Abubakar, to access the sensitive materials used for the conduct of the poll. But the electoral body in an application asked the court to vary its order restraining it from tampering with the BVAS machines, which it argued had to be reconfigured for the governorship and state assembly elections. While delivering its verdict during proceedings on Wednesday, which was attended by the LP standard bearer and a retinue of party bigwigs, the panel, presided over by Justice Joseph Ikwe, dismissed the objections by Obi and his party and held that the backup files on the server could not be lost. Justice Haruna Samani, delivering the lead ruling, said restraining INEC will affect next Saturday's governorship election. He also rebuked the applicants for repeating their request to be allowed to scan and make copies of the electoral materials in INEC's possession, stating that it amounted to an abuse of the court process. He noted that INEC had an affidavit filed before the court guaranteed that the accreditation data contained in the BVAS could not be tampered with or lost. The jurist further stated that neither Obi nor LP filed a counter affidavit to challenge the arguments in INEC's affidavit. Fire got 200 shops in Lagos spare parts market, one killed, others hurt. Yesterday, goods worth millions of naira were burnt down by the unidentified arsonist who invaded Akere Motor Parts and Allied Dealers Market in Olodi Apapa area of Lagos, which claimed the life of one Baba Hakim, the security guard for the taxi park beside the market, was said to have been committed by masked men. According to eyewitnesses, his lifeless body was recovered near the scene of the incident in the early hours of yesterday. It was gathered that the arsonists, after the announcement of the presidential election result, had tried to set fire on the market, but were chased out by two security guards who were shot in the leg by the masked men last Thursday, according to reports. Chairman, Akere Motor Parts and Allied Dealers Association, Ampada, Mr. Izochukwu Uba said he received a call around 3 a.m. yesterday that their market was on fire. Meanwhile, Adeyese Margaret, director of Lagos State Fire and Rescue Service, in a statement yesterday confirmed that the fire started at 3:28 a.m. President Muhammadu Buhari, however, has expressed sadness over the death of a 65-year-old Baba Kazim, the loss of personal property and means of livelihood of some hardworking Nigerians at the Akere Spare Parts Market in Lagos State. A statement by the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, said President Buhari was equally worried that a similar fire incident occurred at the popular Balogun Market a few weeks ago, calling on relevant authorities to take precautions to stem the tide. And finally, on the news, commercial banks issue refused deposits of old notes by customers. Deposit money banks, DMBs across the country yesterday started rejecting deposits of old Naira notes, 1,000 Naira and 500 Naira, after paying customers, forcing business owners, retailers to begin rejecting the old Naira notes despite the Supreme Court's extension of the validity of old notes to December 31st, 2023. Reports across different banks reveal that despite the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, stating that it has not issued a fresh directive to commercial banks on last Friday's judgment of the Supreme Court ordering circulation of the old Naira notes with new ones. A 7-member panel of justice presided over by Justice Inyang Okoro had described as unconstitutional President Muhammadu Buhari's directive to the CBN on Naira redesigning and withdrawal of all Naira notes of 200 Naira, 500 Naira and 1,000 Naira without consultation with the states, Federal Executive Council, the National Council of State and other stakeholders. Reports shows that there was confusion among commercial banks and business operators following the non-issuance of a directive by the CBN on receiving the old notes. As of yesterday, the CBN's website and social media handles showed that the Apex Bank is yet to make an official announcement on the ruling. Also, customers were furious while urging President Muhammadu Buhari and the Apex Bank to make official statement as they cannot transact with the old notes. To refresh our memories, amidst political uncertainty, Nepal's Member of Parliament votes for new president. Moscow launches barrage of missiles on Ukrainian cities. After days of protests, Georgia withdraws foreign agents bill. Australia to purchase up to 5 nuclear subs from the US, and 103 miners found in abandoned truck trailer returned to Guatemala. And that's all for the news at this hour. As today marks World Kidney Day, remember that healthy kidneys make a body healthy, as they are signal that everything is good inside your body. Drink more water and control your sugar levels in order to keep your kidneys always in good condition. I am Lois Tureki. Have a nice day.